Your rumination is about what you could have done to have kept them in the relationship, right? You keep ruminating, what could I have done? Maybe I could have been more, maybe I could have been different. There is nothing more you could have done. You already did enough. In fact, I'd argue, you probably did too much.
So let's answer a big question I've gotten from a lot of you who are watching. I've gotten this from a lot of other people too. Why can't you call a narcissist out on their BS? You can't. That's the short answer. So why? Why can't you call them out? I cannot tell you how many emails I get a day from people who say, will you please meet my husband, wife, brother, sister, mother, father, and tell them they're a narcissist? The answer to that, by the way, is no. Can I show them, Dr. Ramani, can I show them all your videos? Won't they then get it? No. So no, you cannot call them out. Now you can. I'm not going to stop you. But let's talk about what happens if you do. Because my hope, my goal in having this YouTube channel, in creating content, in writing books, in working with clients, and speaking about this, I got one goal and one goal only. And that is to protect people from the narcissists in their lives. We aren't going to get rid of them. Okay, we are not going to get rid of them. It's like putting on bug spray. We are not going to get rid of mosquitoes. I'm trying to figure out a way to keep them from biting you. Okay? So this, and this is an equivalent of bug repellent. Why I don't want you to call them out. Again, you're welcome to. And some people say, Doc, I gotta call them out once. I don't care what happens. I am just gonna look at them and say, you son of a bitch, you are a narcissist. Here's what's gonna happen. They're gonna look at you. They're gonna turn it around. They're gonna say, really? Really? Because I would actually say you're the narcissist. And then they'll go on a 20-minute tirade about how you're the narcissist, and they'll gaslight you, and they'll manipulate you, and they'll throw in some insults, and by the time they're done with you and do that number on you, you are going to think you're the narcissist. Is that really worth it? You can't call them out because, newsflash, they're not listening to you. They never have listened to you. So why all of a sudden, when you want to share the big reveal that, hey, you're a narcissist, why do you think that on that day they're going to say, now I take you seriously, so I'm going to listen? They're not going to. Least of all, when you're giving them really uncomfortable feedback about themselves. For many people, and I'm grateful for this, for many people, they're happy. They're really happy when they finally get the framework. They're like, it all makes sense now. The lack of empathy, the entitlement, the mind games, the confusion, the doubting my reality. Thank you for giving me one word. And they watch the videos and it all makes sense. But just like anything, when you make a big new discovery, like you find a great pizza place, you want to tell everyone about it. This is not one of those discoveries you want to share with that person because they ain't having it. So I will tell you this now. As a therapist, a question comes up is, have you ever told a client that they're narcissistic? Heck yeah. But that is after weeks, if not months, of us developing a relationship. And it's not like I shoulder up in therapy and say, hey, bitch, you're a narcissist. That's not what's happening. It's saying, I'm seeing some patterns here that concern me a bit. La, 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 and I use a lot of therapist talk, and there's a lack of empathy here, and that's concerning me. How do you think other people feel? And this is consistent with narcissism. I'm certainly not squaring up and calling them a narcissist to their face. If I can't do that with the big guns I've got in my office, I don't advise you do. Because if they start really going off on me, I've got the luxury of saying, and it was nice working with you, and here's a list of referrals. Bye. You know, you can't do that so easily. So when you call a person out on being a narcissist, number one, you're putting yourself in harm's way. And by harm's way, I don't mean they're going to beat you up. Maybe they are. But I mean more that they're going to empty both barrels into you. They are going to go completely off on you. And it's going to be hurtful and uncomfortable. That's number one. Number two, they're not going to hear you. So your long explanation and handing them books and showing them videos and saying, now I get it. Do you want to get it too? Not only is it not going to change anything, it's probably going to make things worse. I get it. You figured something out. You want to show them. And some people say, you know what? I want them to know I've got your number. Come on, you guys. I know some of you are thinking, I want them to know I get them. I see it. I'm going to call them out on it. And I get it. It keeps you up all night, right? Like, I finally get it. I so have their number. I'm so going to let them know I have their number. And it feels like this moment of revelation. It feels like the moment you're going to get the one thing nobody ever gets in a relationship with a narcissist. And that's justice. Trust me, it ain't going to happen now. They are not going to hear this. They're not going to say, oh yeah, you figured it out. Yeah, I'm a narcissist. And now that you figured it out, I'm going to become nice. I was just waiting for you. I was just waiting for you to get the riddle. Not going to happen. And so what ends up happening is once you put the pieces together, the pattern becomes clear. You've read the books, you've watched the videos, perhaps you've talked about it in therapy. Save it for the places where you can learn the techniques so it doesn't bring you down anymore. Work on techniques around how you can protect yourself so you don't defend, you don't engage, you don't personalize, you maintain the realistic expectations, you even protect the other people in your purview. For example, children, other family members, or co-workers. Once you figure this out, it becomes a brilliant opportunity not only to shield yourself, but other people in that circumstance. And most importantly, the best way to school the narcissist, it's not to tell them they're a narcissist. The best way to do it is to slowly but surely start pulling back the narcissistic supply. It's a gradual distancing. You're no longer engaging. You're no longer a source of supply, nor are you a source of bait. Initially, that narcissist, you know what's going to happen. They're going to actually try to pull you back in. They're frustrated. You're no longer playing with them. You're no longer playing their ground game. That is how you show them that you got it. You don't have to tell them you got it. Your lack of engagement is all the lesson you need to show them. And when they go on their usual gaslighting rants, or their invalidation, or they're ignoring you, you can smile knowingly, turn to other sources of support in your world, and know you figured this out, and never again are you going to be their punching bag. Today we're going to talk about an interesting question. The question is, why should you never ask a narcissist why? As always, please subscribe, hit the bell. You'll keep getting this kind of content. We'll be taking on these questions all the time. So let's go back to the question. Why should you never ask a narcissist why? Have you ever done that? Have you ever asked a narcissist why? Why do you do X or Y? Why do you think da-da-da-da? In essence, one of the big frustrations of being with a narcissist is simply not understanding. You feel like you're losing your mind. You're incredibly confused, and you want to understand why they're doing what they're doing, and do they even get what they're doing? So take a minute. When you ask someone why, what is it you want to understand? I wish I could talk to you about this directly, because many of you would be saying, well, I want to understand why. And why in psychology gets at motivation. What motivates us to do what we do? So, the simplest example, why do I eat? Ideally, because I'm hungry. Why do I sleep? Because it's night, or because I'm tired. Why do I curse? Fuck, because I'm mad. So, we could, if somebody said, Ram, why are you cursing? I'd say, because I'm pissed. So then the person will say, oh, okay. At least they'll understand why. So when a narcissist gaslights you, when a narcissist verbally abuses you and other people notice it, when a narcissist literally starts getting on their phone when you start talking, but when they're talking, you're watching them like this, when those things happen, it is so natural, isn't it, to want to know why. Why are you doing this? I recently had someone ask me, And she'd asked me, she said, I went up to my narcissistic partner and asked him, like, why do you do this when your sister la la la? Or I asked your sister da 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 da. This person was desperate to understand why the narcissist does what in this case, what he did. So here's what's unfortunate, gang. They're never going to be able to give you an answer to this question. And whatever answer they give you is going to be so deeply unsatisfying that you're going to be more confused and upset than you were when it began. And there's a simple reason for this. You ready? Narcissists don't know their why. They're actually very unclear on their motivations. Because let me tell you this, because this is where the mind fuck is. They do not wake up in the morning and saying, ha ha ha, I'm going out to gaslight, and then I'm going to do some manipulating, and by 3 o'clock it's time for exploitation, and then at 7 o'clock I'm going to lie. That's not how they go through the day. They go through their day to do one thing and one thing only, and that's to protect their fragile ego. And they protect their fragile ego by seeking out validation, being grandiose, being really superficial, acting really entitled, and not bothering themselves with the feelings of other people. That's how they protect that insecure, fragile ego. One thing they're not going to say to you is, oh, the reason I ignored you at that party is actually my ego was fragile. So in order to protect my fragile ego, I had to flirt with your friend. And by doing that, I got lots of validation. So then my ego felt good again. And that's why at the end of the evening, I was doing better. They're not going to give you that answer. So stop looking for it. You will drive yourself nuts if you try to get them to cop to it and come clean. That's why you never ask a narcissist why. You don't say, why did you cheat on me? Why did you steal my stuff? Why did you steal my ideas? Why did you hurt my feelings? Why did you ignore me? Why did you respond? Why did you come to my party? Why don't you care? I'm going to be honest with you. They don't know the answer. Whatever answer they give you is either going to be gaslighting and denial. I didn't ignore you. That never happened. I'm not like that. Or they're going to put it back on you and say, well, remember that time that you did that to me? That's the best question. That's the best answer you're going to get to the question, why? So to save your sanity, you already know the answer. The why is because they're trying to protect their fragile egos. And everything they do is designed to protect that part of themselves and get as much narcissistic supply as quickly as they can. So next time you want to ask them why did you like that girl's bikini pictures? It hurt my feelings. You already know the answer. When we talk about tone, we have to account for a very important issue with narcissists. They are insanely hypersensitive. They can say and do what they want to anyone and be dismissive and invalidating and not care about what comes out of their mouth. But when we talk to them, if we don't get it just right, they get sullen and petulant and mean and rageful and sulky and angry. We have to get it perfect. Doesn't matter what they do. And because they are so hypersensitive, they're always hearing criticism because remember, at the core, they're insecure. So when I've told people and shared with people techniques for how to deal with narcissism, the topic that often comes up is have realistic expectations. Don't engage with them. Don't personalize. Leaving a lot of people frustrated thinking, what the heck am I supposed to talk to them about? Am I just supposed to talk about the weather? Yeah, kind of. Or the whatever it may be, the pizza or the pepperoni or the color of the bedspread. You stick to very, very neutral topics. The challenge with doing that, with just having those kinds of basic topics, is it gets boring for you. And that's when we get to this idea of tone. Narcissists they're not just hypersensitive in the face of words. They're hypersensitive in how people say things to them. So when you're having these neutral, boring, gosh, it's going to be another hot one today conversations with them, they already sense that you're no longer giving them a fight. They already sense that they're no longer getting under your skin the same way. They already sense that you're not engaging. They don't like that because their ground game is getting people in positions as vulnerable as they feel and then attacking. So if you're not giving them that, it's already stopped being as interesting. But when you're talking about such boring things as the color of the mailbox or how hot it is or how cold it is, those topics aren't interesting to you, and your tone starts to become sort of flat and uninterested. You might even occasionally have a tone of contempt or disdain come into your voice. And let me tell you one thing. For all of their lack of empathy, the narcissist is going to hear that. They're going to hear even that tiny, tiny little tang of cynicism in your voice. And once again, they're going to attack. A lot of people say, Doc, I am doing exactly what you're saying. I'm not engaging. I'm not personalizing. And I'll say, could you role play it for me? And they'll role play it, and I can hear it. There is this sort of cynical, contemptuous tone that we all reveal when we realize we can't talk about anything but the weather report and other ridiculously boring, flat stuff. And many of us even resent having to have these interactions, but we have to. We're stuck in the marriage, we're stuck in the relationship, we're stuck in the job, we're stuck with the sister, the brother, the friend, whatever. We just sort of feel like we have to get through the dinner, through the birthday party, through the day, through the evening. So we attempt to have these conversations, but they do pick up on tone. Now, none of us are superhuman, and if we're having a tough day and we're trying to have these sorts of empty, superficial interactions with narcissists to avoid a fight, our tough day may come out in our tone. But because the narcissist is often poised for a fight or poised to feel like they're being criticized, they're going to pick up on your tone. And for a lot of people, I say, yeah, this is the sort of fake it till you make it kind of thing. And you really almost do need to invigorate yourself before you have this conversation and really say, wow, it's going to be another hot one today. Oh, God. You're going to want to peel your own skin off. It's going to be so frustrating. But then you have to ask yourself, do you really want the argument? You're not going to get it right every time. We're only human. And in normal, healthy, reciprocal human relationships, your tone can be off and the other person will get it. Or they'll ask you, they'll say, hey, whoa, you okay? That's not like you to sound like that. Instead of saying, how dare you, and squaring off the way a narcissist would. Watching your tone is a nice, quick and easy technique. I call it narcissism advanced because once you've got the don't engage, don't personalize piece mastered, watching your tone of voice, ensuring that it's not too cynical, not too disdainful, not too bored, is another way to avoid the unnecessary distress and headache and really the loss of bandwidth that comes from dealing with these ongoing petty narcissistic arguments. These are little quick fixes, but they may buy you a few more hours of peace on any given day.
I hope to break down the reasons that people want to call narcissistic people out, the things that happen, and the alternatives to calling them out. So let's talk about the 5 things that happen when you call out a narcissist. Remember that calling out a narcissist is not only a pointless endeavor, it can actually be dangerous. Dangerous for yourself or for others that they're able to punish, because they can. You know, I know why you want to call them out, but they don't care, right? If they were capable of hearing your feedback, then they would likely have enough self-reflective capacity to not do the terrible things they do in the first place. And then I guess they really wouldn't be narcissistic people, would they? So let's break down the 5 things that happen when you call out a narcissist. And as always, if you have more, please toss them in the comments section. The first thing that happens if you call them out is rage. This is obviously the most universal reaction. Calling these folks out as narcissists evokes shame in them, which then starts the whole cascade of rage and shame and acting out in passive aggression. You know the drill. Some people might call them out in the heat of the moment and in the midst of the frustration of the narcissistic relationship will call the narcissist out. But the rage that follows can be even more destabilizing, turning frustration into fear. And it may not be as simple or black and white as you calling them a narcissist. Narcissistic people have the internet too. And should you decide to deconstruct it for them and say, you know what, I don't think you have no empathy and you are so entitled and you're so arrogant, blah, 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 they're going to Google it all and see that all of it adds up to narcissism. Or they will take umbrage at being called out on those bad patterns, because actually narcissistic people do kind of know what they actually do know what nice people are supposed to look like. And even as they do their own terrible things that they do, they like to see themselves as wonderful. So they don't need you telling them that they're doing bad things. So when you call them out, either straight up as a narcissist or subtly as a person that lacks empathy, or even more subjective names like calling them a monster or evil, expect rage that can range from dangerous and terrifying to passive-aggressive, and takes a frustrating situation and makes it worse. The second fallout, I should say, that comes of calling them out is gaslighting. You all know what gaslighting is: a form of manipulation whereby a person's reality is denied, and it is the narcissistic person's ground game. If you are to call them out on narcissistic patterns, then the fallout is things like, well, that never happened, or actually you're the one who did that, or you're the one who said that, or you're being ridiculous, or you seem to have a significant mental illness if this is how you see it, and they'll go on and on. If you know what gaslighting is, it can help you be a bit more resistant to it, but again, you are engaging in a pointless endeavor of calling them out. But if it matters that much to you to do it, then be prepared to be gaslighted. The challenge here is that you will then start pulling out the text messages and emails and behavioral examples to make your case. They don't care. They aren't listening to you. The third thing that likely will happen if you call them out as a narcissist is you being accused of being the narcissist. This is sort of a riff on the gaslighting one, unless you actually do happen to be a narcissistic person as well. I don't know. There's lots of people hopefully that watch this. But remember, the narcissists, like I said, have the internet too. And so if you were to level the accusation against them, that they're the narcissist, then you can expect that they're going to come at you with the whole list of reasons why the various things that comprise narcissism actually apply to you. One of the major fallouts of narcissistic relationships is that the people in them often wonder if they themselves are the narcissist, despite that person who thinks they're narcissistic having empathy and not being egocentric and all the rest of it. But people in narcissistic relationships are so often told they're narcissistic, or may believe that if they set boundaries in this relationship that they're being selfish, and they think of themselves as narcissistic. So if you call them out and they hit you with this, you may be vulnerable to falling for it. But in a significant majority of cases where someone told me that they called out the narcissistic person, they were hit with the accusation that they, the other person, was narcissistic. The number 4 thing that's likely to happen if you call a narcissist out is blame shifting. Remember that it is very difficult for people with narcissistic personalities to take responsibility. So if they behave badly, they will blame other people and other situations and other circumstances, such as their childhood or their workday or their stress or the unfairness of the world or money or their mean coworkers or you or your children or their parents, anybody but themselves. And never will they take responsibility for their behavior. Oh, well, they'll say things like, you think I have anger issues? Maybe. I wouldn't be frustrated if I wasn't the only one around here who actually works and actually does something, and I still manage to do well despite working with a bunch of morons. And then that narcissistic person will go on and talk about having been abused by their parents, or having a crappy spouse, that would be you, or having all these ungrateful kids. So in that case, maybe they're not denying the anger, but after they go on their rant Everyone else is responsible for their terrifying anger. Everyone else but themselves. And finally, the narcissistic person's tried and true response to being called out, which is the silent treatment. This is more often a tool of the covert narcissist. The shame, rage spiral tends to set off more of the passive-aggressive brooding and figuring out how to get revenge rage rather than the screaming and yelling. If you call them a narcissist or on their narcissistic behavior patterns, you may initially get rage or gaslighting of or any of those other things, but then they'll go silent. Maybe they will prelude it and say, hey, well, I don't know why you want to talk to me. Who would ever want to talk to a narcissist? I'm just so terrible. And then silence. Sometimes for days, maybe weeks. I've even heard of months and years. People generally don't like receiving the silent treatment. It makes them uncomfortable. And it may even induce us to apologize for our own being abused. So a person rages at you because you pointed out their narcissistic patterns, and then they go silent, and then you apologize, which in essence is you apologizing for them raging at you. The silent treatment is abusive, and it allows them to maintain their self-victimization through silent rage. It is tense, and it is punitive. The key with the silent treatment is to not fall into the trauma-bonded pattern of wanting to fix it. I am sure I am missing some patterns, but step one is don't call them out, work on you instead. If you do call them out, you can anticipate any or all of these reactions. And you may not care about these reactions. As I say, maybe it feels worth it to call out their behavior, and that's for you to decide in your own situation. But I don't want you to maintain the fantasy that you can call out the narcissistic patterns in a narcissistic person without any fallout, or that by calling them out, it will result in any kind of meaningful, sustainable, or observable change. Here's a proverb for you to try. If you heal the leg of a person, do not be surprised if they use it to run away. I want you to think for a minute and apply that to narcissism. So welcome back to the never-ending proverb series. I'm really enjoying thinking about this series now. Have really been focusing, as you can see, a lot on at what are traditionally African proverbs. So much wisdom in these proverbs that seem to understand narcissism so well. So this particular proverb, if you heal the leg of a person, do not be surprised if they use it to run away. Let's take this one apart. I think some of you are already like, yeah, I'm on this one. So this is, as I said, it's an African proverb. So many of these are just so spot on. I'm struck as I've been reading so many of them recently, like, wow, these are so wise. They're often quite difficult to source to an individual, sometimes even to a country, but they're very on point. I almost find myself sort of a collector of these African proverbs at this point. And this particular proverb, it's the heartbreak of so many people who get into narcissistically abusive relationships. This idea, if you heal the leg of a person, don't be surprised if they run away. Now, as you know, I have talked repeatedly about the toxic fairy tale of the empath and the narcissist, and what happens when very empathic people and very narcissistic people get together. Basically, as too many of you know from firsthand experience, the empathic person exhausts themselves in their ill-fated attempts to love, rescue, enable, and help the narcissist. Everyone is given a bunch of bad advice as we grow up and a bunch of ridiculous fairy tales on love stories and how love stories are about rescuing someone and the happily ever after. And after, you know, all of you know that these rescue love stories are basically a crock of you know what. But this kind of thinking, rescuing and love stories, has gotten so many people into terrible situations in which they really try to help the narcissistic person in their life. They listen to the narcissistic person's victimized rants. They give them endless supply. They learn to stop talking about themselves. They support the narcissistic person in their dreams. They give the narcissistic people second chances, third chances, 150th chances. And they always, always give the narcissistic folks the benefit of the doubt, all in this grand fantasy of rescuing them. But after you do all of that, one day, in many cases, the narcissistic person will either cheat or leave or end the relationship. And as much as I warn people about the harms of narcissism, I'm the first to acknowledge that a narcissistic person doesn't end up with this personality style out of nowhere, right? It's not like it's bad luck. Well, I guess it kind of is bad luck because many narcissistic people have really rough backstories. They did sometimes experience difficult childhoods that were characterized by anything from trauma to neglect to having one or two narcissistic parents to being subjected to lots of inconsistency. And it's believed that narcissism as a personality style really reflects an anxious and avoidant attachment style, which is not an easy way to live. None of it's easy. Sometimes narcissistic people didn't have all of that. Instead, they were just really spoiled, really overindulged as children, never were taught limits, or they were just the overindulged golden child, and they get really good in adulthood at shaping their story in a way that will manipulate other people and get them what they want. Now, keeping all of that in mind, it can be hard because a lot of people feel like, oh, I have to rescue this person. Now, this rescuing narrative tends to happen more often with the vulnerable narcissists. This is the type of narcissism that's characterized by lots of anxiety and sadness at times, social awkwardness, lots of neediness, lots of grievances, sullen victimhood, resentment, being pouty, being quietly rageful, being vindictive. These are folks who, unlike the grandiose narcissistic types or even the malignant narcissistic types, they tend to be more introverted and socially anxious. And as a result, they do not initially come off as charming or charismatic or confident, but rather a vulnerable narcissist will often initially come off as quiet, perhaps even shy, and definitely not as sort of in-your-face attention-seeking. In the early days of any relationship with a vulnerable narcissistic person, they may quite often share sort of tales of woe, belief of how everyone has let them down, their parents, life, everyone they ever went to school with or ever knew, every teacher they ever had. They believe that no one sees their excellence, that they never got a lucky break. Now, if you fall for all of this sort of vulnerable narcissistic polemic or vulnerable narcissistic rant, it can be very tempting to want to rescue them, to want to save them. Vulnerable narcissistic people can almost turn into a sort of project for the empathic people who come into their lives. You may do everything from listen to them for endless hours, loan them your car, introduce them to someone who can help them get a job, loan them money, help them with their resume, tell them how great they are, offer to let them move in so they aren't sofa surfing. In essence, you try to rescue them. You try to right all of the wrongs that they tell you have happened in their life. And in many cases, not all, but many, once you give the narcissist sort of back their legs, as it were, they do finally get the job or a steady salary or whatever it is they needed. They may end up being done with you. I have seen it happen so many times. This isn't going to be that great love story in which the sullen, victimized person turns to you and thanks you for all you've done and then becomes bright and cheery, perhaps they become the sort of prince or princess, charming, and it's all happily ever after. That's Beauty and the Beast. That ain't real life. No, narcissism is a very parasitic style. And after kind of getting back on their feet, may even feel that they can do better than you, which is a terrible thing to have thrown at you since you are the one who got them to this point. But they believe it, and they may trade on this new persona that you helped them create and take that and move on to what they believe are greener pastures. And when this happens, it can hurt. It can really, really hurt and play on all of those wounds, those core wounds like, I'm not good enough. At that point, after you healed their leg and they run away, it is easy to fall into self-blame, self-anger, and a sense that somehow you're the one who's foolish. No, you didn't do anything wrong. You were human. You were kind. And it becomes a painful but real life lesson that when dealing with narcissism, and I gotta tell you, a lot of these African proverbs understand narcissism better than most shrinks understand narcissism today. That once you heal whatever they were bothered by, whatever they thought they need when you met them, when you heal that proverbial leg for them, they are more likely to use that so-called healed leg to run away from you. Now, when a person is left, by a narcissist, when a narcissist leaves the relationship, it's easy to fall into the distorted and flawed thinking that the narcissistic person, that they're going to change for the next person, or it's easy to fall into the belief that of I am not enough, and that's why they left. Or now that they changed, they wanted something better than me. They haven't changed. They didn't change with you. They're not going to change for the next person. They're not going to change for the person after that. You know why? Because they can't. You are more than enough. And they didn't change, and they're not going to change. For narcissistic people, all relationships are transactional. And the transaction largely benefits them. In their heads, if they were actually in touch with themselves, honestly, what they view it as is, hey, I was in a relationship with you, and that makes you lucky because you got to be with me, and you did stuff for me. Well, yeah, you did stuff for me because I deserve it. And guess what? You got to be in a relationship with me, and aren't you lucky? That's actually what goes through their little entitled brains. And then they'll say, and no, I'm kind of done with you because I got what I needed, so bye. It hurts. And because of this transactional nature of these relationships, there are lots of people who get into relationships with narcissists and who help the narcissist sort of heal. And by heal, I don't mean that you're getting them better. You're healing them from their narcissism. I mean that you take care of what they need. You take care of what they feel entitled to. You may pay bills or solve problems or make them look good to other people. And then you watch them walk away because the narcissistic person got what they wanted from that transaction with you. And now they're done because they're done with the transaction. They aren't thinking about you when they leave because they don't care. And your rumination is about what you could have done to have kept them in the relationship, right? You keep ruminating, what could I have done? Maybe I could have been more, maybe I could have been different. There is nothing more you could have done. You already did enough. In fact, I'd argue, you probably did too much. The entitlement of narcissism is that they do expect other people to do what they need, even to sort of fix them, and then the narcissist can waltz off into the sunset on that leg you helped them heal. Adult relationships, no adult relationships they're not about fixing, they're not about rescuing, at least they shouldn't be. Healthy relationships are about balance and respect and mutual regard and compassion. If during all of that you support each other and sometimes help each other solve problems, then that's great. That's wonderful. That can happen, and that will happen in a healthy relationship. But nobody should believe that the only way to win someone over is if you fix their life. So, this proverb, if you heal the leg of a person, do not be surprised if they use it to run away, actually really applies to many narcissistic relationships where people felt they did so much for the narcissistic person, and the narcissistic person took it and walked. The best I can leave you with is stop trying to fix them. It can't be done. It can't be done by me. It can't be done by you. It can't be done. And the fact of the matter is, rescuing and fixing, that's not what love is. Hope that gives you some clarity. Thanks again. Clarity. Thanks again. Clarity. Thanks again. Clarity. Thanks again. Clarity. Thanks again.